Coming to you live from my apartment, it's Rob Has a Podcast. And now here's a guy who is back in the sanctuary, a.k.a. my room where I record the podcast. I am Rob Sestrino. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's our Survivor Feedback Show here for episode number 10 of Survivor 42, coming off of a very fun week in New York City. But we are back here to record a proper podcast here, back in the studio. We have a great guest here with us to talk about Survivor, of course, that he is a trailblazer over at the Washington Post, creating hundreds of TikToks talking about politics, the news, the world at large. Please welcome back to RHAP, Washington Post TikTok guy, Dave Jorgenson. Dave, how are you?
I'm great, Rob. Thank you. Always nice intros. I don't know if they're deserving, but I'll take them. I'm in my own sanctuary, my fluorescently lit blue sanctuary here at work. I can't get out of work right now. No, I can't. I just got kicked out to record this podcast. As you recall, last time we talked for about 5 hours. So my wife was like, "You gotta."
Yes, Dave. So that was way back when, in the year 2021, I watched 40 seasons of Survivor in 1 year, and you and I and Puya Zambakili, I believe, we all got together for Survivor Cagayan, and the number was it number 2?
Yes, number 2.
The number 2
my
season
number
of all
1.
Time. You're number 1. And we talked for hours and hours and hours, and you were so generous with your time, and we said, okay, give us more now. We want to talk about more Survivor with you, Dave.
I will always be generous. I will always go back to this sanctuary, just like Survivor did 2 seasons in a row, and continue to talk Survivor as much as you'll have me. As you know, my first interaction with you was sending a voicemail, about a decade ago, in a code name, and which you somehow had ready last time. So I'm always honored to be here, and I have so much to talk about this season. This is in my mind, bold statement here, a top 5 season of Survivor.
Top 5, baby. Wow.
Yes, that's right. A Tony Vlacho's top 5. I've been yelling top 5, baby, on the streets. No one knows what I'm talking about, but now you will know.
Yeah. Dave, okay, well, I'm very excited to have you back here with us. Yes, you are a real Survivor fan. Got close to maybe being on the show once upon a time. Yes. They wanted you to be a villain.
They did. They
wanted you to be Fabio.
They wanted me to be Fabio. This is fresh off of Nicaragua. Redemption Island was airing, and it's they're just like, why don't you you're in college, just be fun. And I was like, yeah, but I think there's something else to me. It's really, and I should have played that game up for sure. And I told them my favorite player, and I've told Tyson this many times, was Tyson, and they go, no, that can't be your favorite player. They didn't want anyone sneaky or sarcastic or whatever that is. And so
Dave, is it fair to say that Survivor casting has come a long way, where that you were somebody who wanted to be on the show, and they told you that basically, like, no, these are the parts that are in the show, like you have to play, we're casting you to play this part in Survivor.
Yeah, and what's so funny is, I was 20 at the time, and they said, you're too young. I think you're just too young. And now they're like, hey, let's get some 16-year-olds in here. Mix it up a bit. I remember thinking, and a part of being 20 is sometimes when something weird happens, you go, is it just because I'm young, or is this just how it is? I remember thinking, like, it's weird that they're trying to make me this person that already exists. I thought that was really odd. They've come a very far way, and to the point where obviously in diversity, but also just in casting, they just don't seem to care about trying to fill an archetype anymore. They're just trying to cast really interesting people from a large swath.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Yeah, it's it's really a night and day. They really were trying to, fill these archetypes, as we've discussed a lot on the podcast, between Survivor and Big Brother casting. And now they really go out of their way to try to find people who are sort of like, original people who, have stories and reasons for being on the show. And that's definitely been one of the things that they've done, tremendously right over the last, few years of Survivor and Big Brother. But Dave, all right, we'll talk about Survivor. Just give us the update on how everything is going in your world.
It's great. So, we just started a TikTok team, so to speak. So after 2 years, they said, okay, we're going to get you help.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I've
can
been
you go back to, just in case people are jumping in and saying,
Sure.
okay, what is, okay, who is the TikTok guy?
Okay, so great question. You might appreciate this, especially maybe the friends over at Surviving Snyder, that the Washington Post football team podcast, or
Yes.
excuse me, now the Commanders.
Yes.
Back in, I'll try to make this a narrative story. Basically, I started a TikTok account for the Washington Post back in early 2019, and at this point, when I said I want to do this, no one at the Post had any idea, any concept of what TikTok was. They just didn't know. I would describe it to them as like, it's sort of Vine, but better, which is technically true. And basically right off the bat, immediately we had a ton of success with TikTok. And it was sort of undeniable. I had my own actual job here where I was supposed to be making YouTube videos and shooting and editing a bunch of things, but increasingly TikTok was becoming part of my job. And then when the pandemic happened, I said to my boss, which I only thought I was going to have 3 weeks to do this, as everyone did. But I said, I just want to make TikToks. Like, I don't want to have to work on other stuff. I just want to make TikToks at home while we're at home. And then 2 years later, I've made over 1,000 TikToks and it's become my job. And at one point in the midst there is when they said, we're going to rename, the Washington football team. But they just said for next season, it's just going to be called the Washington football team. So that's when I changed my Twitter name to Washington Post TikTok guy as a joke. And then people started saying it constantly. And I think I've walked myself into this corner a little bit.
Yes.
And now
I didn't know about the WFT rebranding of Washington Post TikTok guy.
Yes. And so as anyone that may have followed me at that time or since, when they started coming out with like, okay, we're going to name the team finally, I just kept suggesting Washington Post TikTok guys, Washington Post. But they went with Commanders. So there was another brief moment where I thought I would change my page to Washington Post Commander guy, but that seemed weird. Anyway, fast forward a little bit. They said, okay, you've done a lot of TikToks. This is clearly your job now. And I was lucky enough to get basically promotion to be leading this team. So we have 2 other people, Chris and Carmela, on the TikTok team with me, and they are incredible. If you follow the Post, you've seen them at this point. We call it the Washington Post TikTok Cinematic Universe, and they've been folded in really well. All the Avengers have united. We made about, I think, like 300 TikToks together before we even were in the office. So we hadn't even met each other in person. And so recently it's been really fun to actually make TikToks together, not just green screened we're with each other. Yeah.
Dave, I had seen a couple of months ago where you had integrated your love of Survivor into, you finally got to squeeze Survivor into a TikTok.
I've done it a couple times, maybe 3 times. There was one that no one saw, I feel like, though recently someone told me they had, but at the time I didn't think it was, I didn't remember what the joke was or the concept, but it was taking the clue off the podium or something. It was around Winners at War, and it was in my apartment at home. And that one did okay. But then more recently, I did one that Jeff Probst posted, which was awesome. And it was just, I had found out that now Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, she is a Survivor fan. Yes. And so the whole joke, because I was watching all these hearings, which is, if anyone was watching, they were a lot to watch. And so I said, what if we put a twist on it? And the hearings were just about senators that found out she's a Survivor fan. So it was just asking her Survivor questions, and that TikTok did quite well. So I was very happy to finally find an excuse. As soon as I saw she was a Survivor fan, I was like, that's it. That's a TikTok. We got it.
So I saw the TikTok. I didn't know that Jeff reposted it. What did Jeff say?
He just reposted it on Twitter, or sorry, on Instagram. I don't think he posted on Twitter, but that was awesome. Of course, I messaged him. I said, hey, it's Dave. You don't remember me. Maybe you remember Fabio. I made something.
I don't think he remembers Fabio, to be honest.
Probably not. He didn't respond, of course. But I mean, that was amazing that he posted it. I as anyone that knows me knows I'm a Survivor fan. So I got about 50 text messages and like a few hours of people who follow Jeff. So that was cool.
Okay. Well, Dave, let's talk some Survivor 42 that you say is a top 5 season. Now, are your rankings fluid, or you feel like it has cemented its play? Like, could it go off the rails?
I feel like I have a sort of the Dalton Ross system of ratings, which is to say that they stay pretty similar, but they might go 1 or 2 down.
A Washington Commanders podcast guy. Yeah,
that's right. Which more recently, he did have one where he dropped some 15 spaces or something. That won't happen here. I think
we don't need to talk about what season that was. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Listen, that's still top 10 for me. Not that you need to hear that, but that's the only DVD I own. So if that means anything to you,
yeah,
it's at my desk over
might
there.
have been an
Anyway.
overcorrection. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was overcorrection, but I call it top 10. So anyway, I would say it's top 5. Maybe it could end up being like a top 8, maybe season, but I feel like everything about it comes down to casting, and I've said this many times before to anyone that'll listen, but I think even on your podcast, which that's what Kagayan was, it's casting. Like everyone on this cast, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 people, but even like someone like Mariah brought something to the table. They've all they've all just had their own unique twist on the game, whether they're good or bad players. And I think that's what sometimes people don't necessarily appreciate, is that we kind of need bad players on a season as well, or at least like the sort of emotionally charged players like Mike. Certainly Omar is running the game at this point, but Mike's emotions are also running the game. And I think that's something that's really fun to watch, as week to week, it's just like, who is Mike going to be mad at and how will that affect this episode? And so we're at a point now where I think even to some extent with Tori, because I do like when a really like a big villain gets to the end, would have been happy with any of the top 9 people winning the game. And I just think that's pretty wild that we were in a place like that. Whereas I feel like last season, I was basically rooting for Ricard at this point and really no one else. And I love the Erica one, but that's who I was rooting for. And now I feel like any of these people could win and I'd be really happy. So that's where that part of that is.
Do you see any big differences between Survivor 42 and Survivor 41?
Well, it is like a spot the difference map, and they're the same picture in terms of all the different twists they're putting out there. But I think the cast is part of it. Again, 41 cast is really solid. It's not that I don't like that cast. It's just that this cast just seems to be really good in confessionals, and they're bringing so many different unique perspectives all at once. So I think that's part of it. I think there's something to be said about whether or not it's the edit or the cast. The focus on camp life is the perfect balance in my mind this season, where even in episodes that are really heavy in strategy or anything else, we're still getting these moments at camp, like the really classic sort of what's the thing that what's that? Is it Funny 115? What's that?
Funny 115? Yeah.
Yes. It's that kind of classic part of Survivor where there's these moments that are just in the show that you could blink and miss them, but if you don't miss them, you're just so delighted that you saw them. And I think we're getting a lot of that this season, all the way down to like, you know, the way Omar jumped in the water one time, or just Jonathan doing his monkey run, which really was like all of 3 seconds in the episode, but it was just like,
it was a highlight for you.
It was a highlight only in the sense of just it just felt like this is what I really enjoy about Survivor. On top of everything else new that they're bringing to it, I like all the new things they're bringing, but I really like that there's still this level of humor that they're including in the show.
Dave, what did you think about the downfall of High this week?
I thought it was fairly inevitable. I think High was to be fair, High was my pregame winners pick. So this isn't this is with all the love for High, but it was getting to a point where High seemed to be someone that I wouldn't say he was over strategizing, but, and I think you alluded to this yesterday, that he backed himself into a corner a bit. He just felt like it just didn't seem like I didn't know the way out for High unless he just won out immunities, and maybe he could have, but it seemed inevitable. So
it was very interesting to talk to High in the exit interview, and I don't know if you heard any of that, but
I did.
When I spoke with High, he talked about that his final 3 was him and Omar and Drea, which feels like was not even the same show that I've been watching.
I heard that, and I did a double take wherever I was listening, so, doing the dishes or something. But I was like, those are my 3 winners picks at this point. I mean, at any watching the season, those are the 3 people I've most often said I think could win. And I thought, how wild is it that he would want to take basically the other powerhouses to the end? Also, don't think I've seen him have much of a conversation, if any, with Drea. Am I misremembering that? I don't.
I mean, we've seen him talk to Drea a little bit. We haven't seen Omar talk to Drea. Has been the bigger thing. Fair. We saw like High and Drea a couple times, like before tribal councils. Like he was talking with her. I mean, again, they were Amulet people together, and they spoke a little bit before the Lydia tribal council, and a little bit before the Chanel tribal council. So we've seen them sort of like talking like a little strategy, but never Omar and Drea.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that is part of what I like about the season, is that there are all these connections. And what's I would have liked to have seen those on screen, and maybe we'll still see more Omar and Drea, but I really like these across the board. You can see these connections with people, and whether or not we're seeing them on screen, it's really interesting to think about these different pairs, because the personalities of all these people are so different that it feels like you're just sort of moving chess pieces and seeing how they fit together. It's, again, kind of like Cagayan, kind of like David versus Goliath, where it was really fluid, and I think that makes it really fun to watch.
Yeah, I wonder if we kind of got this story of like just set up what happened in this episode kind of from like Mike and Omar's point of view, where that, you know, if Hai never really considered Mike to be one of his like end game people, but Mike considered Hai like his ride or die, did we need to see this story from sort of like Mike's perspective to be able to see Omar be able to pull off this master stroke to get Hai, or to get Mike turned around against Hai and be feeling like, oh, he said I'm a puppet. That's it.
That's it. I don't know if we needed it, but I did love what Hai said in the exit interview. It was like, that wasn't even that good of a lie. Like,
yeah, he said it was a stupid lie. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting distinction to make, because whether or not it's a stupid lie, it's more the intent and the awareness that Omar had, knowing that it would work with Mike. That's what makes it so fun for me. So from the episode, I think I got everything I needed to see within that. I'm still very much team, you know, Paramount Plus post 3-hour episodes whenever you can. But I do think that, like, yeah, I just wanted to see a beginning, middle, end arc on this episode, which I think we got for the beginning. Omar sort of Babe Ruth called his shot. I'm gonna make this happen, and then we saw it happen. We saw him making it happen, and then we saw it happen, which was him turning Mike against Hai. I thought that was a really fun sort of mini arc within the season.
So let me give you a question that I have. Okay, this is the feedback show, but this is a question from me, and this question is about at Tribal Council. Okay. We saw an exchange between Lindsay and ultimately Jonathan. And of course, we knew what the plan was to get Hai out, but also that from Hai's perspective, that the plan was that they're going to get Jonathan out. I want to ask you a little bit about what is going on in this exchange here. Here's Jeff asking a question to Lindsay, and then Jonathan's response.
So, Lindsay, what is tonight's vote about?
I feel like tonight's vote is about making an even playing field.
Okay.
Trying to have everyone feel comfortable that they have a fair shot to get to the end.
Wow. Jonathan, Lindsay said to even the playing field.
Right. Yeah. It's something. What she said was somebody is too powerful in some way, and she wants to even the playing field. So, wrapping my head around what that means right now.
Okay. I think this is really interesting here. Okay. So on the surface, it seems like, okay, did Lindsay say something about Hai and Jonathan doesn't know how to respond because that he doesn't want to necessarily like give away the game, that it's going to be Hai? Or was this all theater, where is Lindsay saying something about evening out the playing field of like, okay, we need to take Jonathan off of the board because he's going to win these challenges? And is Jonathan actually doing a really good job of playing very dumb and being flummoxed at the tribal council and just to throw Hai off?
I think it's the latter, and I will give my reasons, which let me leave the caveat that I understand that Jonathan thought there were 7 triangles when there was 41. So I don't want to like give him all the credit in the world, but I do think that Jonathan is playing to some extent, and just stay with me for a second. It's not the same, but some extent the Tony game, in terms of like, I'm just trying to kind of make myself look small in these certain moments and just be this person that you're not worried about. And I think part of that goes with that makes this theater. I think the one distinction I would draw maybe, and I don't know, is that I don't think Jonathan knows that Lindsay has been kind of gunning for him a little bit, but I do think that he knows the plan is definitely Hai, and that he thinks that he understands what Lindsay is doing here, which is trying to make Hai think it's Jonathan, but really she's talking about Hai. I did get that sense in the episode, and I will say, I was spoiled before watching. I saw like Hai had tweeted something. He said something after I lost Survivor, and I was about to watch the episode. So anyway, I knew it was going to be Hai, but I had that in my mind while watching. So I don't. But I feel like yes, Jonathan was aware it was happening. I don't think to the extent though that he expects Lindsay might be coming for him in the next few weeks though.
Yeah. When I played Survivor, this was not something that was talked about, but it is interesting to think about, and I would love to get into this with like a person who has played more recently because I do think sometimes like players like a little bit can exaggerate just how much, oh yeah, we did this, but how much do players really get into like, all right, when we're at tribal council, I'm going to make it sound like it's you. And you act like you're really confused. You act like you don't know what I'm talking about, because I feel like that you can only do so much of it before it becomes like unsettling and can actually like destabilize the alliance. Like you're sort of like being like con people to some degree. And you have to really have like implicit trust in the other people that you're working with. It's like a Better Call Saul episode.
Great plug. Love Better Call Saul. I think it's happening more often, but I don't know that, to your exact point, there's so much risk there. I mean, there's probably a mid to high reward, but the risk is really high that one, are you that good of an actor? And two, is your acting partner, are they going to complete the scene with you? Are you eventually going to be able to make Saul's brother freak out on the stand or whatever happens? I can't remember. But I think that I like seeing that, and I would actually prefer that, but I almost want to see the scenes ahead of time of them discussing that. That would be more fun for me, because then I would feel like more in on the audience a little bit, just because otherwise we don't really know it's theater. And then we just have after the fact when Jonathan and Lindsay are doing their exit interviews and telling, no, we planned it, but you're like, did you?
Yeah.
So I like that idea, but I would almost turn the question back on you. And this is a radical thought, but I was thinking it this week, which is, if tribal council is theater, because I was watching this going like, what are we even learning? We're getting really fun, what's it called? Analogies from Marianne, but what are we actually learning here? Is tribal council is it necessary to the point that we need to see these things, or would you rather spend time elsewhere?
I would rather spend the time elsewhere. I had been thinking about this sort of just like in the context of last week's episode where we saw where, Drea, got to talk about something that was like really important to her. And, obviously she had that platform at Tribal Council. And in some ways, like I've felt the same way that you have, like for a long time, about like, well, if everything is theater, then what are we doing here? What are we why are we spending so much time here? And again, we'll talk about analogies and stuff like that, which is sort of like wasting the time. But I felt like with last week's episode in the rearview mirror, that I kind of felt like that in some ways, like, is Tribal Council like the only place where we're actually like getting like people like really speaking their truth in some way, where like in this week's episode, we didn't see anything about how the players were feeling after last week's episode. And I think that was a product of the edit. I'm sure that there were conversations that were had in those 2 days about what happened in last week's episode. But because it didn't happen at Tribal Council, like, the show has no choice but to show something very powerful that happens at a Tribal Council. And, we've seen in other seasons where, people open up and are able to sort of like have like a very, important thing that they want to say at Tribal Council. And in some ways, I feel like that, you have like it's a moment where there could be a lot of truth about how the players are feeling that the edit can't really hide. But then also we have like a lot of things where I don't know what to take away from Tribal Council, where it's all like, I feel like professional wrestling sometimes.
Yeah, yes, I agree. I think a lot of times I come at this with the perspective of technically what is my actual job, which is video editing. And I think last week with the Tory vote off, that was necessary television. That was important. And I thought that made an impact. And that was a story they needed to tell. But I think if you're a video editor and you have this Tribal Council this week, you go, let's just cut most of this and spend more time elsewhere. Like, I think the audience is smart enough to go, this is a short tribal council. That's fine. There's 7 minutes left in the episode. We're just going to have a vote off. I don't think that anyone is looking at their watches and going, oh, like, I can't wait to hear the next. And Marianne, I love you, but the next analogy, you know, I'm not sure that they're.
And she actually had the good one this week.
She did. She did. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that part of it, this is also sort of like that they have this like built-in like recipe of that, you know, this 5-act structure of television where, okay, Survivor in this era is the 5th act is the tribal council. So we're going to take a break. And then when we come back, we're not taking a break in the podcast at the second. But the show is like, oh, who's going to get voted off? Commercial, come in, walk into tribal. If you go back and watch old seasons of of Survivor, you know, they'd have the immunity challenge, commercial. Then we have camp life. And then in the same like block of TV, in the same like 8 or 9 minutes, that we'd have like, okay, the scrambling back at camp and then tribal council. But that Survivor, unless it's like an episode like last week where we had like double tribal councils, like we are going to always, you know, immunity challenge. Then we have a break. Then we have a camp life segment of like what's going to happen at tribal council, and then a break, and then a full segment of tribal council. And now, is that because that's just the way the producers are used to it? Is that the way that Jeff says, hey, like this is the Jeff time now on the show? Okay, we're not losing that. Let's cut a bunch of camp life. We need to get to, you know, my part of the show.
Yeah, it strikes me as sort of the latter, and I'll give Jeff a break here and not say it's all Jeff's idea, but it seems to me it's like a CBS type thing where they're saying, hey, this is the staple of the show, tribal council. We need this to be a certain length because people, like, we want people to be able to turn their TV on at 7:45, 8:45 Central and go, wait, that's not how it works. 8:45. Yeah, whatever. And no, this is when tribal council is going to be on versus the old way, which again is the way I prefer. But yeah, it just feels like we're watching it and I'm enjoying it, and I'll watch the whole thing. And I did love the Jenga thing, as did Jonathan. Whether or not he understood it is still up in the air. But I just kind of go, I don't know if I need
this. No, Jenga's good. I've done the Jenga analogy. Jenga analogy is good. Hi. Who closed down a tribal council a couple of weeks ago, talking about how that he's going back to the drivers and the passengers conversation. Do you remember that one?
Yes, and I did not really follow, honestly, at a certain point, as I don't know if anyone did, but it just, that's the thing, is my eyes start to glaze over. It's sort of like when a challenge you've already seen before is being explained and or you know in the midst of it, and I kind of just, my eyes glaze over a little bit and I go, okay, well, this is happening. Okay, I'll stick around.
Yeah, this was highs from a couple of weeks ago.
Can I add in?
Yeah.
If you're in the driver position, you need to know when to let someone else drive. And if you don't know how to let someone else drive, you better be wearing a seatbelt.
Whoa. Okay.
Okay.
You don't know how to let somebody else drive. You better be wearing a seatbelt, Dave.
I'm buckled up. I did appreciate this for the sort of beginning of this mini high Romeo rivalry, which was clearly what they wanted us to think it, and I think that was the case. They kept cutting to Romeo. So yeah, I thought that was fun. I like the pettiness of it for sure, but maybe that could have been the whole tribal. That's it.
Okay, well, okay, then High sets up. Okay, this time he has the perfect analogy for what this game is like. Okay, let's decide if this is the perfect analogy.
Perfect analogy is we're all long distance runners with blindfolds on. You don't know who's in the front, and that person could very well trip up, and you're just waiting for that opportunity to overtake them.
All right, we're all long distance runners with blindfolds on, which you know, very dangerous even to run a short distance with a blindfold.
Yeah, we should ask Xander about that. Wasn't he a runner? I feel like he might have.
Yes, he was track. But so we're in a marathon and everybody is blindfolded, and then you're waiting for somebody to fall down.
Could very well trip up, and you're just waiting for that opportunity to overtake them.
So yeah, I don't think that's quite the analogy of what this is. Maybe if this was like do you remember the show like Solitary? Like, it's like if you were basically like everybody is like working on their own project, like isolated, and you have like a time trial. I think that would be if you're sort of like running your own race blindfolded and you don't know how the other people are doing.
I think the best part about these, and yes, I like your version better, is that Jeff kind of just nods his head like, oh, yeah. This the blindfolded long distance runner analogy, I know it well.
Dave, you know what I would love to see one time where Jeff says, no, it's not like that. You know what?
And he has
that's wrong. It's not like that at all.
Exactly. There's precedent, not necessarily for him rejecting an analogy, but for him going, no, I like sassy Jeff. I think he should.
We like sassy Jeff, but has he ever? I feel like at Tribal Council, like he is like the ultimate like improviser. Like yes, and how else is it like that? He's never once shot down any person's analogy, not once.
There's a little bit of a Michael Scott energy when he goes in the office and he goes to an improv class and he's just making things up. that's kind of what Jeff to a fault, where it's just we're gonna keep doing this until the scene's over.
To any future Survivor players, I challenge you, come up with the analogy that Jeff Probst is gonna reject. Like Jeff, you know, the game is like a shoe store, and you walk in and you're trying to see it, like, hey, got any size 10s? And they're like, no, sorry, how about an 11?
Jeff, the game is like a tortoise and the hare, but if the tortoise had wheels that were motorized, but the hare could fly, and I am a person watching the tortoise and the hare, and yeah, I think I could, I would challenge accepted if I ever get on. I'm gonna look at the camera and go, Rob.
That's for me. Yeah. Jeff, you know, the game is kind of like having an old Nintendo, and sometimes you got the cartridges and they don't really work, and you gotta blow in it, and that'll work for a little bit, but then later on, I don't know, you got to try something else. You bang on it.
We're riffing, but I actually like that one. But yeah, you have to ruin it. But you take the cartridge and you try to make it play with a Wii, and it doesn't work, and you're moving around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
I would just love one time for Jeff to, and maybe it happens, and maybe again a survivor could tell me, like, somebody tries an analogy and Jeff says, no, that is wrong.
The reason I want this to happen badly now, I'm fully invested on this, but the reason I think it never will is because that's what Jeff wants. He wants this. He wants analogy theater, and I don't think it's like that's why Marianne feels, and wisely, you know, is playing to Jeff and becoming the person he goes to, because she knows if she has a metaphor, whatever, it's gonna make it. It's going to go the distance blindfolded.
Perfect.
Yes.
Let's start to bring in some of our feedback questions for this week. This one deals with a little bit of the edit, but it does bring up the family visit, which I want to talk about. So let's bring in a question from Kylie.
Hi, Rob and Dave. It's Kylie from Nashville. My question is, Ricard stated that at their Pizza Under the Stars night, they also had a loved one's reward, but that it didn't make air. He said this might have been because Erica, the winner, wasn't there, and it didn't add to her edit. Do you think that means that either Mike, Omar, or Lindsay is going to win this season? Thanks.
Okay, so in season 41, they did this same reward, the Sanctuary. They also got the loved ones visit videos, but it didn't make the air. Ricard had theorized that maybe if Erica was there, it was maybe they would have shown it. Do you think, because we saw it this season, that one of the three people who were at this reward will be the winner of the season?
I think it's a really good theory, but I don't think so. I think Omar very much it's his game to lose at this point, but I don't know that means that one of these three people. I don't know if I buy that. I think if anything, we need to talk more about the disembodied voices.
Yes.
And how weird that was. Great question, by the way. I think it's a really interesting point, but I don't think that historically they've cared too much about like a loved one's visit. They'll still focus on whatever has the most impact.
What a weird setup, Dave. You know, I had thought that they did in season 41 and they cut it because it's like, this didn't work. Did not pack the emotional punch. But no, I think they went back to the well, seemingly to do the same exact thing of basically they have like this outdoor area and they have the ability to project images onto that. They said like, should we get like one big screen? Like, no, get 9 projecters and we'll project 9 images in different, like almost like you want to have like the POV of like, if you were a housefly, what would that look like?
That was yes. There's so many things to touch on, and the more I think it's just it's like they had the he always talks about he has the notes on the board, the note cards or whatever.
Yes,
it's like they had a leftover one from Ghost Island that said disembodied voices, and someone grabbed it and just slammed it on. 42 family visit.
And then so we want to get people to see their loved ones. Okay, and we have everything with COVID. We can't bring the loved ones out. Okay,
right.
What if we trick people and make them think that their loved ones are here?
Hi, babe. I just want you to know I love you. I miss you a lot. Oh my God. I could be there in person with you in Fiji, but
what is this nightmare hellscape?
Wait, so first of all, there's two reactions I want to focus. I don't really think that Omar was just like, this pizza's good. I don't know that he was, but Lindsay looked truly concerned. And I think she had the proper reaction. And Mike was like the friend that you take in a haunted house, and he's the one that like takes
let's get out of here.
It takes it very literal, like we're gonna die here. That is his reaction. Like, what's happening? Why is this?
This is giving me the heebie-jeebies.
He really, and trust me, I love Mike. That's part of the reason I love him is that he just was like, this is, oh my God, where could these be coming from? Like, it doesn't seem that he's factoring the fact that he's on a show and maybe they have speakers playing the disembodied voices.
It was just so weird. And then like they weren't like pictures of like your love. It was like pictures of like baby pictures and here's me as a baby with my dog. What are we doing?
That was someone sent a Dropbox to the loved ones and said, just throw everything you got in here. Just put it in the folder. We'll project it on the tree trunk later. Don't worry about it. I would argue there was more impact in, I think it was Australian Outback, and it's like a famous meme where they're like looking at the computer and he's like logging in.
Computer.
That had more impact just because it was more focused on he's talking to his, like that was it, versus or watching whatever actually happened there. It just felt like a little more intimate. This was like, we are haunting you and good luck. We're holding your family hostage. We have their souls in the woods.
Yeah. I mean, this is 2 seasons in a row that they tried to do that. I don't like, I'm sure that they have the technology to be able to do a video call with the loved ones. I don't know why that they didn't want to do that.
I wonder if it, well, this would totally go against what I was saying with the Australian, but if at this point they don't want to have that feeling of like, they really want to make them feel more remote or something. Maybe that's the idea. Like this is more of a distant, your ancestors that are alive, but still calling to you from the woods. Which by the way, I'm sure someone else has said this, but it was like the whispers and Lost. It was just a lot. There was a lot of things happening.
It's a lot of things happening. And also, I mean, from a game perspective, this is kind of weird too. Let me bring in a question that is from one of our listeners, Jordan.
Hey, Rob, it's Jordan from DC, longtime listener, first-time caller. I was just wondering if you think that Survivor is missing an opportunity for drama by not teasing the loved ones' videos as the reward. I feel like Jeff could give a little bit of, and also on the reward, you're playing for love, and tell them that they're getting the loved ones' videos. That way, when Lindsay has to pick the people for reward, she can't just cop out on who hasn't eaten. People back at camp are gonna be more upset. Just there's more drama involved. Makes for better TV. Do you think that's a missed opportunity?
Dave, this is a very good question about why are we doing these things? Like the whole point of, and I said this a lot in the top 40 season countdown, of the purpose of the loved ones visit is not for people to see their loved ones. The purpose of the loved ones visit is to make people mad that they didn't get to see their loved ones.
Yes, I fully agree with this point. I think they walk themselves into a corner, not unlike me changing my Twitter name. But as someone who's had a lot of bad ideas, I can relate. I think this is what happened. This is a guess, but I feel like they said, why don't we just surprise them in the woods with this video projected? Won't that be cool TV? And I think once they said that, they couldn't reverse engineer because they wanted that surprise. But I totally agree that the better sort of surprise / drama is to, at the moment of the challenge, say, this is what you're playing for. And that ultimately, you typically, to your point and the caller's point, that's where the drama comes from. Not even like the loved one, not even watching them hang out with their spouse or whoever. It's the people back at camp who are really upset. And so, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And maybe is it because the videos were underwhelming and short, and that's why they didn't want to necessarily like have them. But I mean, going back to the early days of Survivor, you know, that there was so much drama created in the first Survivor about getting to see the videos, and Jenna Lewis didn't get to see her video. So I think the survivors would be very excited to get their video. And ideally, isn't that what you want? It's the person who wins the challenge to, like, even like in like recent seasons, like this is like a big deal where, you know, that Ron Clark was voted out, where that he didn't pick the right people to go on and loved ones visit.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that I believe they quarantined for 2 weeks before, so they've spent actually potentially even more time away than other seasons, even though this is a shorter season. So they really haven't necessarily heard from their loved ones for a month, at least a month at this point. Yeah, I would have liked to see that. I would have liked to see if Lindsay's choices had changed too. And now I'm kind of wondering would her choices have changed. I'm not sure they would have, but I think there would have at least been an impact to her picking them for sure.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. She picked the people that like, okay, I want to pick people that haven't had rewards. She said that was going to be her rubric to decide who should go. I didn't want to say anything for poor Romeo, but has Romeo eaten?
I think as always, that's just a made up. You come, and hopefully Lindsay did this, and I think she did. You come to a challenge always with an excuse in the back of your head of, if I win, who do I take? I'd like to think that that's what she was. And so whether or not that excuse is actually valid, at least you have something ready on hand to say. But yes, I don't think Romeo's had a reward. And she even pointed out, yeah, Mike got PB&J, but that wasn't enough. I mean, she's basically just trying to.
Yeah, he got PB&J, but really, you know, I've been talking to this guy about eating pizza, so let me go. And this was Romeo when he got to eat rice.
We got a little bag of rice. It could have been a bag of cockroaches or pieces of doo-doo, and we would have been celebrating.
Yeah.
I wake up every morning, coffee and my bag of doo-doo, and I'm ready to go. Yeah.
He didn't get to go to Applebee's. Yeah, I don't think he was on the PB&J team, right?
No, I don't think so. And again, I think it's an excuse. It's weird that, you know, Romeo, for the most part, we haven't even heard from him except for some of these funny confessionals. Like, we're not getting a lot.
He wasn't on the kebab team with Jonathan last week.
He didn't. Yeah, he hasn't had 18 eggs yet either. Not that anyone has, but yeah.
Well, can I bring in a Romeo questions? Talk about Romeo. Sarah wants to know: is Romeo now a certified GOAT, all but guaranteed to be a 0-vote finalist?
I think so, and it really bums me out because I also had Romeo pretty high on my list pre-game, and I think Romeo is someone that, you know, potentially, and this, I'm thinking way too far ahead past your question already, but like, he could come back and have a really good game. I feel like he's just arrived at the merge, and whether or not what High said is true or not, that Romeo kind of got himself to the bottom, or if it was a mixture of some weird social aspects here.
Can I just bring in High's quote from his High's exit interview with me? He told me the other day. He said Romeo wasn't on let's see. Okay. Romeo wasn't paranoid because he was on the bottom. Romeo was on the bottom because he was paranoid.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I feel like, especially today, in today's world, there's not a lot of gray area for things. This strikes me as more of a gray area thing, where maybe it was a little bit of both, where he started to get paranoid, but as soon as he got a little bit, they were like, you know, we need someone to outcast, and that's what we're doing. For good reason.
I think Romeo was like gaslit of like, I think that people started being like, all right, they made an alliance, and Romeo was like, hold on a second, am I in the alliance? Like, oh my God, you're so paranoid. This is why we can't work with you.
Yeah, I totally think so. And again, it could have started with just the suggestion of Romeo being somewhat paranoid, but like, I don't think it was that. What did High said? He said that High went around and told Tori, who told Chanel, like, or sorry, Romeo went around and told Tori, who told you. I don't know that that's necessarily paranoia so much as just a bad mistake. You know, I don't know that. So yeah, it's odd, but that's all to say that Romeo could be I could see him getting to the end, being kind of the GOAT taken at the end and not getting votes. And I'd be bummed about that. But I think Romeo is such an interesting person and a good Survivor player, decent enough at least, that on another season he'd have a much better shot.
Yeah, I think had such a good first half of the game. It seemed that he was somebody who was really running Ika of, that he had like he seemed like that he was like calm and had all of these plans going on. And then ultimately, like, he just got to the merge, and then like his people weren't there, or like his person was Drea, and Drea just had other options to go with, and he sort of just has been like left for dead in the game. And I just think that now people are looking at the threats, and now because those threat dominoes have started falling now, and we had High go this week. I think that whoever goes this, and the do or die is we'll talk about that. But I just think that now we're in the phase of the game of like, okay, now it's like the, big gun battle where people are going to be going after, a big game hunting.
And the only way to stop that gun battle and dominoes is to put a Jenga piece in front of that domino and shoot at someone, Jeff. I think the other part of this, which I guess we're kind of saying within all this, is that they made a 8-person alliance, which is not unprecedented, but maybe. And so I think when you do that, by default, you can't make it a 9-person alliance. That's too many people. And Rocksroy was barely even part of the 8-person alliance. So at that point, you're kind of looking for someone to sort of push the outside just as almost a backup. I think.
Just to even look at the makeup of the jury, like, where are the Romeo votes coming from? Where, maybe Rocksroy felt like something for him, maybe Tori, but, it's hard to see where, 4 or 5 Romeo votes are going to be coming from.
Yeah, I can't. I think the only vote I can see is Rocksroy, only because Rocksroy would just find a really weird specific reason because he answered the question well, a very old school sort of vote.
Yeah, and I love Romeo. I really am looking forward to hopefully getting to talk to him after the season and getting his perspective on how things went. But it just feels like that, he was not able to really lock something in the first part. And maybe in a different season, it works out differently. But unfortunately, just the way that the season played out did not go in his favor.
Yeah.
Okay, I mentioned the do or die. It's coming. It's coming, Dave. Are you ready?
Oh, no one's ready. Monty Hall's not even ready. No, I don't want it.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead.
So let's do some do or die talk for this week. And let's bring in a call from our great friend, Elisa.
Hi, Robin, feedback guest, because I don't know who the feedback guest is.
Dave Jorgenson.
I hope you're having a great day. My name's Elisa, and I'm here to comment on the next time on Survivor of this week. It seems that we're alluding to a do or die twist like we had in season 41. Assuming that it's going to be the do or die and we're going to have the same exact rules as we had last season, I'd like both of you to take a guess of who you think is going to sit out of the immunity and who you think is going to play for the immunity. And bonus, who do you think is going to be the do or die of the season?
Okay. So before we get into that, let me just ask you, the do or die is here for a reason. Who do you think are the winners and losers of a Final 7 do or die?
The winners or losers in the sense of like who's going to get the
who does it benefit and who does it hurt to have this twist in the game at the Final 7?
Well, Romeo's fresh in my mind. It certainly could benefit him. I think this is not unlike the same position that Deshaun was in last season. This was a moment for him and Danny to some extent. Obviously Danny, but I think who else? I'm trying to go through the list. Lindsay doesn't really. She's in a pretty good spot. Omar's in a good spot. I think Omar sits out. I think, and I know I'm kind of answering both questions at the same time here. I think Drea definitely goes for it, just because that's everything we've known about her is that she's going to go for it. Jonathan's going to go for it. Will probably win the challenge. Who am I missing?
Yeah, well, I would say that to me, if I'm going to just look at the list of the winners or the losers, like I feel like that Jonathan, I think, is the biggest winner of having a do or die here, because one, that Jonathan's definitely going to play in the challenge, right? And what are the chances Jonathan is going to be the first one out of the challenge? I don't know if there's been a challenge yet where he's the first one out of the challenge. And yes, he could slip or anything like that. So this is a week where I feel like that if things stayed the course, I think Jonathan gets voted out this week. That would be my prediction going into this week if we had a normal vote.
Okay.
But now we've changed the math on this, because now that there is like at least a 50% chance, and maybe higher if people don't know the Monty Hall problem, that we're not going to have a regular vote. So now I think that there's a very good chance Jonathan's in the final 6. And when we talked about this, Dave, back at the beginning of the merge, it's like, well, they can't really take their eye off this guy, because that if he can just get to like 5 or 6, then he wins an immunity challenge or 2. It's not like he wouldn't be able to make the fire. All of a sudden, he's in the final 3. Now, Jonathan's game has shifted, certainly, where that in the first half of the game, we talked about like what a physical specimen. Has anybody dominated the challenges, to a lot of like kind of a dum-dum, Jonathan, not playing a great game, but he's still there.
He's still there, and depending on what the jury values, him, successfully winning immunity on Do or Die, getting fire making, winning a bunch of challenges in a row, like it, of course, Roxroy's can be like yes, and Mike, if he's there in the jury, there's a chance. That would be really unsatisfying for me. It's definitely giving heroes, healers, hustlers vibes in that way. In no disrespect to our friend Ben, but I just feel like it has that sort of fixed game feel to it at this point already. And it's only the second time that it's happened. I
don't think that Jonathan is the winner of the season, but I can definitely see like he's gonna be in the mix, and especially if he wins out. Like I feel like the Mike and Roxroy, and then you get into like maybe you have like a person or two who people are maybe salty with. Like you could squint and see it, where Jonathan is the winner of the season. So I think that this is really like a big boost for Jonathan this week.
Yeah, I think Jonathan, of all the people left, he's not my top one to win, but if he did it, whatever, that would work out. Big boost for Jonathan. I think big loss for someone potentially like Omar, who really has been working within the game that he knows exists at this point.
Yes.
And this could really throw a wrench in his plans, and I really hope that he doesn't compete in the challenge.
I agree. I agree. I feel like that I don't think that he will lose. He will be the person who ends up in the Do or Die this week. I think he will properly sit out of the challenge. But as somebody who's playing like a super strategic game, he misses an opportunity to be able to really like put his fingerprint on the game this week, where we've seen that every chance that he's had, he's been able to, inflict his will upon the game. This is a week where instead of like the person that he might want to send out of the game going, now a random person will go out of the game.
Yeah. And I wonder, speaking of random, or rather like the chances here, they do the rock thing, right? Where it's who's going to compete and they reveal.
Yes.
Is that right? So I got to think in this, last season, there wasn't necessarily a definitive challenge beast. I feel like Ricard won a bunch at the end there, but
I think Ricard won 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, like it wasn't clear that there's someone out here who's going to win this challenge. If they walk up to this and they say, hey, you can choose whether to play and it's going to be revealed, I'm looking at Jonathan going, I don't think I'm going to compete. So I wonder if it's going to be like a Jonathan and Drea situation. Like I wonder if it's that like literally just 2 people and that could hurt her.
So I've thought about this over the course of the week. And so I have a list of who I think is going to play and who I think is not going to play. I think that Jonathan plays no matter what. Jonathan is going to play. I think that for Drea and Lindsay, who I think are working together now as a pair. Now, again, Hai told us that Omar and Drea and Hai were a pair, but we've never, I have no evidence on the screen of Omar and Drea working together. I think that Drea and Lindsay are sort of like working together. And I think that their next move is that they feel like they need to get around Jonathan. Lindsay very much wanted to get rid of Jonathan this week. I feel like that they feel like, okay, he's blocking us from winning the immunities. We could win out maybe if Jonathan's not here. So I think for Drea and Lindsay, they're looking to get out Jonathan. Now, somebody will have to beat Jonathan in the immunity challenge. Will they basically punt on the round and let Jonathan just have the immunity? I think they both play in the Do or Die.
I think that's a good yes. And there is, Lindsay obviously last week proved, but I think she's been proving, week to week that she is, just almost as big a challenge as Jonathan, if not bigger now, because even on those group challenges, I think it like started the merge, she was right next to him, swimming right next to him, going just as fast. I think if depending on the challenge, she could beat him. So maybe it's a Lindsay, Drea, Jonathan, but I just can't see.
Okay, I have one
anyone
more.
else. Okay.
I have one more.
Okay.
I think that the fourth person who I think will play in Do or Die this week is somebody that when we had the rice negotiation, this was a person that said when Jeff's like, all right, I need 9 people to sit out. This person said like, hey, I'm going to play. I came to play. I want to play. I don't see Mike sitting out of the challenge. I think Mike plays in the Do or Die.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think I think you're right. And he is an emotional player and someone who plays with his heart. Yeah, that's a good point. It could be Mike. And also Mike might be the one that gets out first because
that's what I think. I think that's my prediction. So those are the 4 that I predict to go in. And I predict Mike as being the Do or Die person. That is my official thinking this through. I think that Omar, Romeo, and Marianne sit out. I think the other 4 play. I think Mike is out of the challenge and Mike has been. His best challenge was basically the challenge at the merge where he was kind of like the MVP of the losing team, where he was like pulling up Drea onto the ball. But
yes,
and we don't know what the challenge is going to be. But it tends to be like one of these. Like last season, it was like hold the things in place with the marble on top. But it'll probably be some sort of like stand as still as you can to potentially win the immunity. And I just feel like I think that Mike, feels like, okay, I can't sit out of a challenge. That's not who I am. And then I think he ends up being the person to go into the Do or Die, which sets up a very interesting scenario of Mike and his idol, Dave.
He can't play the idol in the Do or Die.
No, I don't think so.
You just mean he would play for someone else?
He can't play his idol in the Do or Die. Now, does Mike, though, have the presence, or does any of the other players have the presence to say, well, hear me out.
Okay.
That does say an Omar or, basically, because I don't know how much they know about the rules of what the Do or Die is. But, okay, Mike can't play his idol. Could somebody say, hey, Mike, let me hold on to your idol tonight because in case you go out of the game, then, okay, you'll be gone. But, don't you want me to have the idol? Does Mike feel that kind of way about anybody who's left in the game? And might it be Jonathan, potentially? And also, does Drea feel like, hey, Mike could go out of the game without, just like without warning tonight? I better use my knowledge as power tonight and take the idol from Mike before he potentially goes into a Do or Die. Because if Mike does go out of the game, his idol goes with him, and I lose my chance to get an idol with the Do or Die.
I think that's best case scenario with the knowledge is power. If that happens with Drea, I would love to see that. And maybe it could happen with Marianne if she competed, and or whoever, like if whoever has the Do or Die, if they have an idol, I could see Drea correctly surmising this is something that I should do.
Now, Drea doesn't know about Marianne's new idol, so the only power in the game that Drea knows where it is Mike's idol. So I think that sets up that really interesting scenario of somebody with an idol heading into the Do or Die. Do they bequeath their idol to someone before the Do or Die? Do they basically say, hey, look, if I'm out of the game, the idol's coming with me? Or does Drea say, okay, this is my chance. I'm going to steal the idol from this person before they even go into play Do or Die?
I think it's more likely that Mike doesn't, if he were the person, does not give his idol away and that Drea would take it from him. But I would counter that. I think he's more likely to give it to someone like Omar. Didn't we see last episode where, I don't remember what the quote was from Mike. He's like, listen, I will get rid of Jonathan. Am I imagining that? Was there something?
He said that to High. He said, I don't have a handshake with Jonathan.
Right. Okay. And whether or not that was theater for High, I suppose that's possible.
I think it was theater for High.
Okay.
He's like, yeah, I'll be his puppet for one more day.
I still maintain that while Mike is platonically in love with Jonathan to a point, I think Omar is someone that he may trust more to give the idol. That's sort of.
See, I could see Omar saying like, "Hey, Mike, that just in case what happens, like I'd hate to see all of your hard work to get the idol in this season go to waste, and I'll make sure it gets used in a way that you would want, and hopefully, we'll
likey no likey,
but maybe he will."
Maybe Mikey will like you. Can I present the worst case scenario to you? In my view,
please,
is that Drea does compete and she's out for. And there's precedent here. Drea, I think, was a really good competitor in the group challenges, but individually, I don't think that she's done that well, and she's been out really quick.
Yeah, I think she's been kind of like middle of the pack on
middle of the pack.
Yeah,
but if the middle of the pack now becomes like, let's say it's just Lindsay and Jonathan, I think Drea is
now Romeo's and not competing, and some of the other people that are out first. Yeah.
So and you can see where I'm going with this. Worst case scenario, she gets do or die, and she just dies metaphorically, and takes all of those advantages with her and down the garbage disposal.
It would be very sad to see for Drea's game, but. Yeah. From if you're a Survivor purist,
true,
kind of feel like that. Like,
that's
okay,
best case.
I mean, if you that like the knowledge is power. Like I know that we're concerned. Like okay, knowledge is power could potentially wreck the game here. That we have this like superpower that nobody knows about. At least the Survivor 41 players, because the information got out, that they were able to sort of maneuver around it with the moment where Xander. Is like, oh, you could have this fake idol. So that was a great moment in that season where if, we see like where Drea just like takes Mike's idol and I'm sure if you're Mike, you're pretty chapped about that of just like, wait, what? You could just take my thing for no reason? Like, well, I have I do have a coupon.
I do like the idea of her just going out in a blaze of glory, taking everything and just flushing it down the toilet with her. And as someone who is, I would say, relatively a Survivor purist, just in the sense of like I don't like too many advantages because it's really hard for me to sort of wrap my head around all the different things that could happen, which is, one of the reasons I listen to your podcast, though, thankfully. But I feel like there is too many. I don't like knowledge is power. I'm with you, and I think Stephen Fishback is the one that really hates it.
He hates it because you can't lie. That was his big.
I think that's a really that's kind of a purist Survivor purist standpoint, I think, and I would agree with that. It does feel like, isn't the whole point of the game that you can lie outside of the actual vote itself? So I don't love it, but I do like Drea a lot. So I will say, if anyone that has it, I'm glad it's Drea, and I think she was most likely to use it correctly. And maybe I'm Mike.
Let's take another question about the do or die and the idols. This is a question from somebody who calls himself Do or Die 2 Electric Boogaloo. How should a player with an immunity idol navigate the do or die challenge? Does it make sense for Mike and Marianne to sit out and not risk a game of chance so that they could still play their idol if there is a vote at the next tribal council?
I think so, for sure. And I think especially if you're Marianne, 100%, because and not to say that finding idols is super easy, but you already know that you have an idol no one else knows about. You could play it if you need to, and then maybe you could find another one at the final 6. Not that should be how everyone plays the game, but there's something to be said about once you get to final 7, you have an idol. Like that's getting really warm in my pocket. I'm ready to play it. And I don't want to risk something like the do or die challenge to,
if you are Mike or you're Marianne, if you're people who are not targeting Jonathan, like I think you have to sort of like look at it like this, like, am I okay with Jonathan advancing another round? And if you're Mike, who's like very, very tight with Jonathan, I think absolutely. So like, I would say sit out, because the reason why you should play the challenge is because you want to prevent Jonathan from getting the immunity. And so, for Marianne, who it's interesting that we have this Taku 4 and the edit has not given us this at all. But if the Taku 4 wanted to, they could also we're going to just pagong the other people that are in the game. Lindsay seemed the most hesitant to want to do that. She
Which
said,
is
hey,
nuts to me.
It is kind of nuts. It seems like that Lindsay would rather throw her lot in with Drea than to potentially stick with the Taku 4. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for that. Sure. It came up last season with Shannon Ricard that perhaps like Lindsay feels like, hey, if I sit in the end with Omar and Jonathan as a woman in that final 3, are people going to look at me as the person that they want to give the credit to? Will they give the credit to Omar, who's been sort of the person who is the strategist, or Jonathan, the person who's been the muscle? Like, where does Lindsay fit into that? So I can understand why Lindsay might not want to go in that direction. But numerically, it is interesting that at 7, they have 4, and they might not just stick together.
Yeah, I think, again, there's so many things we don't know that are happening. But as someone who's watching the show, it seems like for Lindsay, that Final Four is perfect because assuming a fire making challenge, you're probably someone is going to, you could use Jonathan almost as the sort of the fire making goat, so to speak, the person that you use to get out the actual threat. And I feel like we've seen that a couple of times now where whoever wins that Final Four immunity, as long as they send Jonathan against the person they don't want the final three, which in this case would be Omar, like that's a pretty clear path for Lindsay. I think she could beat Jonathan. I think she can beat Marianne. So yeah, I'm kind of curious too in general if people start to look at Jonathan that way as their like sort of Final Four fire making ticket.
Yeah. So if you have an idol, I think you definitely should not be in the do or die, because you could just let the do or die play out, and then I guess if you are okay, if you have an idol, it's the two things. If you have an idol and you are okay with Jonathan being the person who advances, if you're okay with both of those things, I think sit out. I think that then if Jonathan, even if he is the person that is doing the do or die, or the do or die person gets safe, and now you have to do a regular vote. Now I think, okay, well now I can play my idol if I don't like how the actual vote is going to play out. Ultimately, for Liana last season, it ended up being like a point where she went out where she shouldn't have gone out, where it just happened that Danny won immunity and Deshawn got the do or die, and she was sort of like the next person on the hit list.
Yeah, I remember that being, and maybe people would feel different, but like best case scenario for the alliance, that was Danny and Deshawn, because Danny was safe and Deshawn became safe. And so I wonder if Romeo looks at it that way, where it's like, even if he's out first, that might actually be better odds for him.
Yes.
Because otherwise he might have been the person out.
Well, I do think that there is a scenario where, like, if they do the do or die in season 43 or season 44, like, I think that you can strategize for the do or die of like, hey, if I have like, if it's always going to be the same thing with the Monty Hall problem, and we've sort of like reduced that down to that, okay, you can get the do or die down to a 50-50 shot of being safe or not safe. Ultimately, if you have a 80% chance that you are going to be the person who goes home, a 90% chance I'm going to go home, then you should go into the do or die, and you should try to get out first, because then you have at least a 50-50 chance of being immune, rather than the person who is going to be voted out if they don't win the immunity. We've seen lots of players in a Survivor Challenge where it's the final seven, like a Troy Zan of like, okay, well, if I don't win this immunity, I'm done. I'm toast. I think you'd probably rather have the 50-50 shot, but you don't know the rules ahead of time for the Survivor 42 players. So that Romeo has no way to sort of like pregame and plan for that outcome.
Yeah, I do. It's funny because I actually really like that idea that you could plan for it, but I don't like the idea, and maybe this is what you were saying, that they reduce it to a 50-50. I don't like the idea of doing Monty Hall problem over and over again, because at a certain point, people will know what to do. Even if they don't even understand how it works, they'll know what to do.
Do you think, Dave, that it should not be the Monty Hall problem this time? Maybe it should be like a do or die wheel of like, should it be like a different game of chance every time?
Drew Carey should come out there in a CBS, whatever crossover event of the century, and bring the wheel. No, I definitely think it shouldn't be, but I also was 100% sure. I was convinced that there was going to be no hourglass this season, that Danny had done his due diligence in convincing Jeff not even do the twist in general, but much less the hourglass. I was very wrong, so I feel like I'm wrong here too, and that they're gonna do it again. Because the other thing that, from a sort of casual Survivor standpoint, it's probably better for them to do it again, because now that person's watching, knowing maybe they know at least more about the Monty Hall problem at this point, to be watching and having a little bit more of awareness. Oh, this is what this person should do. They should pick the opposite box, whatever, how the problem works. That actually could be better television, you could argue, just for this one more season where people are more actively aware, rather, unlike, last season when people were on Twitter Googling or whatever a Monty Hall problem, watching Christian explain it on the whiteboard, that kind of situation. I think now people can more actively kind of go, oh no, they made the wrong move, kind of like that.
Okay. Let's bring in a question from Yale, who says, why is everybody counting Mike out of the end game? I feel like that he has real winner potential, and we've seen he has a great social game, even when getting taken on the pizza reward, and voted the right way possibly every time.
I would love Mike to win. I don't know that he would have the votes. I could see Mike getting, predictably Roxroy and Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe like, I don't know, a Marianne, someone he's made an emotional, I don't know if he has with Marianne, but someone he's made an emotional connection with that he could like, but I don't know that he could get a majority.
I mean, Lindsay or Drea, I think are possibilities for Mike.
True. Yeah, it's possible. I would love to see it. I think Mike, is, speaking of unique characters, I'm sure we've had people somewhat like him, but not in recent seasons. And I'd love that for him, so to speak.
Yeah.
But
it would be very fun. I think that Mike's fatal flaw has been, it's interesting that we saw Drea say this in the episode, that Drea's takeaway from the last episode was that she needs to stop playing so much with her heart and play with her head, which that Drea has been very much like, I think people have referred to her as just being sort of like, steely in the game and sort of like not emotional at all. It's interesting that she feels like that she has played this game too much with her heart, where Mike's game has really been like all heart so far. That it's just interesting that she was the one to say, okay, I'm not going to play emotional anymore.
Right, because every confession, not every, but a lot of the confessionals with Drea up until that point have been, look at all of my things. Like, to the point where they had to do jump cuts to show all of her advantages. They couldn't even let that scene last long enough without her having to, anyway. I
like that you picked up on the jump cuts there.
Yeah, I love that. I think whenever they make interesting new choices on Survivor, I'm fully like in tune. Like, that's cool that they did that. All the way back to my original voicemail to you, which is, should they have flashbacks in seasons, which they eventually did.
They did.
And
you manifested it.
I something like that. But I love when I think the editing choices can, especially from a storytelling standpoint, are really fun when they decide to do that.
By the way, speaking of flashbacks, did you like that they had High's flashback in his boot episode here in episode 10?
I saw someone very, very upset on the internet, online, if you can believe it, about this. I disagree. I didn't think, because I think enough of the episodes have shown flashbacks where that person didn't go out. Again, I was basically spoiled for this episode, but even then, I don't think I think it's fine. I feel like last season we had a few after post-merge that were flashbacks where that person didn't go out, I think. So it's whatever. I think, to me, speaking of storytelling, maybe that's why you brought it up, I think that was the right time to tell High's story. So it worked for me.
I just think that they should have the rule of, let's do no flashbacks after the merge. Like that. Let's make the merge the cutoff for flashbacks. I'm like, why are we getting like
while we're at
High's backstory in episode 10?
Yeah,
I do
agree
episode.
with
It
that.
just feels like tacked on when you do it at that point.
It does feel tacked on. I don't know.
There was no other point we could have gotten High's backstory prior to the day he's getting voted out.
Maybe. I'm not going to go back to what I said, though. I still thought it was like within the episode itself, I thought it told a really interesting story. And I like that. Again, I really like the Camp Life stuff. And that's what that was it. They sort of tied it into the Camp Life. So they're fixing the shelter,
sure.
But I think overall it would be better to not have any. The flashbacks in general, I don't love every time. I don't want them to force them, and I feel like some of them were forced this season for sure.
So just to go back to Mike, that my issue for Mike isn't necessarily like, can he win if he gets there? My issue for Mike is I don't see a path for him to get to the end.
Yeah, I think that's right. He could definitely be even someone taken out by fire making or a final 5 boot, because you're looking around and at that point you're going, who's the most likable here? And it could very much be a Mike. He could squeak by with the right group of people. Like if he does stick with Jonathan and I don't know, maybe an Omar, because I think Omar realizes he could probably beat anyone at this point, and maybe he just sees Mike as a really reliable vote, then that might be his path to the end. But then of course Omar would beat him. But I think there's a path. It's much narrower to draw an analogy.
Yeah, I feel like that the only scenario that I see where Mike ends up getting there at this point, I feel like if it's kind of like, okay, so if Drea and Lindsay are working together and they become kind of like a known pair where it's like, okay, well, Drea isn't working with Taku anymore. It's like, okay, that sort of like destabilizes if Omar doesn't feel like he's like in as tight with Drea and Lindsay, if he feels like on the outs, maybe he sort of latches on more to Jonathan and Mike by proxy and feels like, okay, is that potentially a final three that Omar feels good about? And then maybe they go after, maybe Drea or Lindsay gets taken out in the do or die. Maybe that's the scenario where it ends up sort of like Omar, Jonathan, Mike in the final three.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. And I do wonder, and I don't know if this is worth, we don't have a lot of information about it, but I keep thinking with Drea and Lindsay, I wonder, so something that happened last season that was brought up a few times is like, we need a woman to win. And they don't know what happened in 41. And I do think that's worth discussing, that might actually be a factor down the line, maybe even next episode, where they're looking around and we're going, hey, we want a woman to win this season. And so they start to play a little bit more in that direction.
We heard Erica say in season 41 about after she voted out Liana, it was very hard for her to vote out Liana because she obviously she didn't want to vote a woman out of the game. She wanted a woman to win, and she said maybe she could be that woman. It was foreshadowing. So right. Yeah, I wonder if it's like if it could be two things of certainly Drea and Lindsay. Now I don't know how, I know Drea is probably a bigger fan. I'm not sure how big of a fan of the show Lindsay is. But is it that they really want to see the curse be broken, and little do they know the curse is already broken, or is it going back to where does Lindsay feel like I won't get credit in the end if I'm up against some of these other guys based on how some of the past Survivor juries have voted? But yeah, I do see a scenario where Drea and Lindsay and Marianne, end up wanting to work together.
And that would be a great final three for me, because I feel like you have three pretty different games, and I think Drea wins in that scenario, but I still think it would be a little bit closer maybe. So I would like to see that for sure. Yeah.
Marianne and the final tribal council would be very fun.
Yes. 10 times as many analogies at least. Yeah. And that's when Jeff finally goes, that's enough.
Yeah. Okay. No more now. No, he'll never say that with
right. Yeah.
with Marianne. Okay. Let me bring back a question about Omar's game. Okay. Let's bring in Melinda with a question about Omar and Mike.
Hi, Rob and Dave. This is Melinda. I first want to just say thanks, Dave, for all of the funny and informative content over on the Washington Post TikTok. I really enjoyed it. My Survivor question is about Omar's big lie. My concern watching back the episode was that Mike was not going to make it all the way to the end. He would go to Ponderosa, talk to Hai, and then find the truth out. And if he felt played by Hai in the game, he definitely would feel played by Omar hearing that back. So we know from Exit Press that Hai did find out about the extent of the lie from watching the episode back. But in the moment, do you think that Omar's best play now is to help Mike get all the way to the end? And how does he keep this a secret?
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Okay, if you tell a big enough lie to somebody, then do you need to keep them in the game so that they never go to Ponderosa and find out that you were lying to them, especially when it's somebody as salty as Mike?
I love that concept, and I don't disagree. I think if anyone can get away with sending that person home to Ponderosa and still getting their vote, I think it's Omar. So just to really talk about Omar there, but I think if for instance I were out there, or Fabio, I would definitely keep Mike with me to the end for that reason. Also, I think Mike is someone, if you're playing as good as game as Omar, you can beat him in the end as well. Yeah. So yeah. Also, Melinda, thank you. That was very nice.
So, but this is something that Steven and Aaron talked about on the Know-It-Alls this week. And by the way, Aaron did a great job sitting in for me, and so did Steven on the Know-It-Alls this week, where yes, while it's true that Mike was not called a puppet by Hai, those exact words did not come out of Hai's mouth, the sentiment felt true enough to Mike that while it was not a quote, isn't that how Hai was treating Mike anyway? Like, it kind of like was true-ish more than it was like factually a correct statement.
Yes, and whether or not Hai talks like that, to his point, I think Hai said something in the exit press about like, well, I would never speak like that. He still seemed to be thinking like that and sort of using the game and using Mike that way. So yeah, that's what made it so brilliant. Was I think there's probably already something in the back of Mike's head, and all he had to do was just kind of like, water that seed a little bit, and the plant grew immediately.
Yeah.
So there you go, analogy number 7. But I feel like that Omar is so good because, one, he's able to figure out like what someone is sensitive about or insecure about, and 2, he's able to execute that in a way where, again, like over two or 3 days in this episode, he decided he was going to do this and made it happen. And so, yeah, I think it was definitely based on some truth, which is, of course, the best lies.
Okay. How about a question? One more about Omar. Let's see. Actually, let me go with a different one. So it's kind of a long question. Instead of going with that one, let's go to a question from. Now, do you know who Sonia and Gabe are, Dave?
Yeah, I got a tip from them that they might be sending something. So
okay, so Sonia and Gabe wrote in a question. They said that they are. They said, AKA your favorite ex-coworkers, Survivor comrades, and Todd's #1 fan club. Todd Herzog.
Not the Todd you're thinking. No.
Oh no, a different Todd.
Different Todd.
Different
ex-coworker. Yeah.
Okay. They want to know, as a longtime super fan of the show and previously applicant yourself, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this cast compared to last season. How would you have aligned, or who would you be aligned with if you were on?
I love that. Hi, Sonia and Gabe, by the way, favorite exco, and they're also longtime listeners of the podcast. I don't know if
Now, are they Survivor fans because they both have classic old school Survivor names?
Yeah, especially Sonia famously was voted out first and then came to work with me 20 years later. But she, that of course for those reasons, but also they were the people that every Thursday morning we would talk about the show. So that's really cool to have them call. Anyway, I think. Man, I would definitely align with the Mike, to be honest with you. And I think part of it's because the same reason maybe Omar likes to align with Mike is that he's someone who is a reliable vote as long as you stay loyal to him and don't lie to him. And I think that's relatively easy to do, or at least manage with someone like Mike, especially if you understand where he's coming from. And I think that's the type of person I can relate with. I think Drea, for the same reasons Hai said in his exit interview, where he just like connected with Drea in that first moment where he was like, she's playing, she's going for it. I think that's the type of person I would like to hitch my wagon to, who's willing to make those tougher decisions and kind of almost use them as not a meat shield, but an advantage shield, so to speak, where that person's going for everything. And I'm just kind of like along for the ride until, it goes really well, really bad for them. So I think those two, I don't know what was the question about was it comparing the cast between 2 seasons? Is that right?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about the difference between the 2 casts.
I think the difference for the most part, and this is just from a viewer standpoint, I don't know if this is true, is that I think generally the cast seems to like each other a lot better. And part of that too is that it seemed pretty clear at the merge when everything kind of went all over the place and everything just sort of blended together, that they all were willing to work together in a more fluid, flexible way. Whereas I don't think we quite saw that in the same way in 41. So that's made things a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything to this, but I feel like that if I went through the Survivor 41 cast like one by one, like I think most of the casting choices are really good.
Totally.
But I feel like that the sum of the parts in Survivor 42 like has produced a better stew, so to speak.
We love a good stew.
Like all the carrots and the potatoes and
really
the warm broth and the
42 stew.
Yeah, and the onions. You put them all together, and it produced, I think, a better meal than. Again, each of the ingredients separate, like all of these people, I've talked to so many of them on the podcast, have all been like really fun, great casting choices, but I feel like it didn't gel together as well as season 42 has.
Yeah. And I think there wasn't this sense at the beginning of, oh, that person's out. that's okay with me, in the same way as maybe 41. And again, no disrespect to any current or former players, but it just like I still think about Daniel and Jenny and a lot of those pre-merge players in a way that maybe I don't about other seasons, where it just feels like everyone on this cast seemed to be bringing something and seemed to have a decent chance to get pretty far. And I think that's the other sort of it's a good stew.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ponderosa.
Totally undersold the stew. Okay. So Dave, I have another question for you. Okay. I started you off with a question from me, and then I have another question for you from me.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, what's going on? This is Rob. Really always enjoy seeing all of your TikToks. I have a question for you about the advantages that Drea has this week with Lindsay on the amulet side of things. Could we see, if the do or die ends up with the person being safe, could Drea and Lindsay use this week to cash in the amulet for a vote steal? I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Rob, thank you so much. I love when I've noticed that you've watched our TikToks and leave comments. Thank you. Yeah. I think so. I would love to see, is there a possibility where Drea could essentially play like 4 votes or something crazy?
Yeah. Well, okay. So here, this is the thing. Okay. So, all right. We're at the final 7. All right. So now Drea and Lindsay, potentially, they've been working together. Could they consummate this alliance by taking the one thing that could turn them against each other and basically turn that potential idol into a vote steal? And potentially maybe they're at the bottom. Maybe people are like, oh, okay, this is the week we're going to come after Drea and Lindsay. Maybe it's like, oh, Jonathan's safe. Mike's going to play his idol. No, Drea could steal his idol. But they could potentially, in a tribe of 7, use Drea's vote, Lindsay's vote, a vote steal from somebody else, steal Omar's vote, steal Jonathan's vote, and Drea still has an extra vote. They could have 4 votes in the tribe of 7. And the 2 of them could be the majority. Now, Marianne has an extra vote too. So if Marianne has the presence of mind, it could be tied 4-4. Yes,
I'd love this, and it's the rare time where I'm really into a sort of advantage getting in this way, because the players that would do it, I really want to see succeed, and I don't want to disappoint our caller Rob. Yes. But I feel like Lindsay is pretty risk averse, and I don't even know if I ever see her playing the extra vote unless she has to. And maybe there's a situation where they feel like they have to, because they want to take Omar out. Whoever.
Okay, so I don't want to misspeak, because I don't want to get a bunch of calls on it. So if they played, Drea and Lindsay played the vote steal, and say they stole Mike's vote. Okay. If Marianne played her extra vote and was voting with the rest of the guys, that would give that other side 5. So there could potentially be 9 votes in this 7-person tribal council. If I'm remembering correctly, the Analogies power the do or die person still does get to vote. So they would potentially be able to make it be 5-4. Now, if they steal Marianne's vote and she play her extra vote, I think so.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think it takes away from. I think there's other things that can take away from you having, the pre-merge sort of.
Yes.
Whatever, you can't vote.
The move might be, if you were going to potentially, if there was a possibility of there being a tie, you want to put the vote on Marianne so she can't re-vote with an extra vote.
Oh my God.
But if she had played the extra vote, it wouldn't be a tie, I don't think.
Yes.
Dave, we've had coffee and like breakfast and stuff like that, and it's like, oh boy, how do we figure this out? So you can empathize with the survivors who are like on like 0 calories.
I
and
totally
be like
agree.
Up all night, like trying to figure this out.
And that goes all the way back to my answer of I think I would, in some ways, want to align with people that I think I'm slightly more strategic than, but not and people that are more. So the Drea, the person that would tell me, that would pull what was it, Michaela, who was out in the sand showing like, this is what we have to do. Like, I need someone that can show that to me and I can understand it, and then I can pull in Mike and do that, because with coffee, with my whole breakfast of a bag of poo-poo or whatever Romeo I was eating, I'm not, it makes sense to me, but also like, and I don't want to rain on this parade at all, but there's a big why here. Is it that important to them at this point to make that move, or is that more of a final 6?
Well, I think it really comes down to like what is going to happen with the knowledge is power. Like, who is going to be the knowledge is power person? I'm sorry, I keep saying knowledge is power. Who is the do or die person this week? And you could end up in a scenario where, like, if it looks like one of them could go home, like say that it is going to be, Jonathan wins immunity, and maybe Mike got the do or die and was successful. Well, now it's like, okay, well, now who do you vote out here? Is it going to be, does the group vote out Omar here? I think that people start to look at Drea and Lindsay in this spot. Is this when
self-preservation there for sure?
Yeah. Is this when Drea steals Mike's idol and basically, is going to play it? Do they vote together with the vote steal? I feel like that if we get a normal tribal council, I think advantages are coming out, but I suspect this is the season we are going to see the flat out somebody like, you got the skull,
right?
You lose.
Yes, I think that's. But also on top of all this, let's say they don't get the skull. Let's say Mike gets the do or die, and he doesn't die. Is there a scenario where, I don't know, someone like Omar, if they pull out all these events, are the advantages pulled out? They are pulled out kind of after the fact for the most part, right? I'm trying to think this through.
So then if the do or die is successful, a successful, like you find whatever, like the fire, because fire represents your life. Then, okay, now we're going to vote. Okay. Then you can play the advantages, but I don't think that any advantages can be played except for maybe the knowledge is power.
Right. And then I guess what I was curious is, like, if the knowledge is power is played, Omar's looking around going, oh, something's happening here. Does he then play a shot in the dark? And then what if his shot in the dark plays? And then you have, I think, no votes unless.
Well, I think this is the last night to play the shot in the dark.
Exactly. So that's the other, right? Another reason that thing to put in the.
Yeah. So so that they would all put their votes on Omar, but he played the shot in the dark.
Sure. Yeah. Again, 1 in 6 shot. Who knows? But I'm just trying to imagine this, like, worst case or best case scenario, depending on how you like all this.
Yeah. So I think at that point, okay. All right. If we really want to go down the word.
Yeah, I do. I do actually.
Yeah. So Jonathan is in this scenario. Jonathan was the immunity person. Okay. Mike was the do or die winner. Did Drea steal his idol with knowledge is power or no?
Yeah, but it wouldn't matter, because if you play your do or die, you don't get a vote, right?
You don't get
your shot in the dark, I mean.
If you play, yes, but I just want to know where the idols are at this point.
Yeah, let's say she plays it, because there's only a couple. Yeah. Okay.
So then basically, everybody puts their vote on Omar. Okay. Omar played the shot in the dark, so he's actually immune. And what I ask about Drea and the idol is that, okay, so then hypothetically, now I think that, okay, so Omar, Mike, Jonathan all cannot be voted for, which means that Romeo, Drea, Lindsay, and Marianne could be voted for. I don't know if we would go to rocks at that point, or if there would be another vote where you cannot vote for Omar, Jonathan, or Mike. I think we would vote a second time.
I think we would vote a second time, and then I think it would be Romeo, right? Probably.
I mean, possibly, depending on what had happened leading up to that. But I don't think that Drea could play her idols at that point, or steal Mike's idol.
And at that point, Omar could no longer vote, but Mike and Jonathan can on that second vote.
Yes, I think that's correct. Okay.
I don't know.
If somebody listened to this podcast from like 3 years ago, do you think that they would even be able to figure out what's going on?
I would understand if I listened 3 hours ago, but you led me down that path.
Okay. All right. Let me see. Anything else from this week in Survivor, Dave, that you want to talk about?
we covered disembodied voices. I really just wanted to nail down how weird that was, and that I just don't see why more people aren't laughing at that, but maybe they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here, I've got a couple other quick things.
Okay.
So Omar got to go on the pizza reward. He had one question for Jeff.
Is there pineapple pizza?
Did you hear that? He says, "Is there going to be pineapple pizza?"
I'm so glad you asked. I'm prepared for this. I am fully in the Knights of Pineapple. That is a subreddit that appreciates all things pineapple.
Oh,
I love pineapple pizza. Pineapple and ham, pineapple and pepperoni.
Knights of Pineapple. That's a real thing.
It's a real subreddit, and it's just people posting their
KOP.
foods with pineapple. That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Big. Yes, that could go south really fast. But yes, I'm one of the KOP acolyte, and I love pineapple on most things. You know, I even like just a straight up pineapple smoothie. So yeah, I'm for it.
Yeah, pineapple is very delicious. I am not a pineapple pizza hater. My wife famously is. Yeah, you know, if I was someplace and they had a bunch of pizzas and they had a Hawaiian slice, I'll take a Hawaiian slice.
Sure.
I think it's a nice like palate cleanser compared to like some of the other slices. Like I don't think I would get like a whole pineapple or Hawaiian pie, but if you have a bunch of slices, different pizzas out, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I really like, man, I could go for days. I shout out to Gabe and Sonia again, but specifically Gabe. Detroit style pizza with pineapple. That is solid. Yeah. I don't think you can go wrong unless you're Nicole. Where I would, if Omar had said, "Is there going to be mushrooms?" I would have turned off the TV and walked away.
Yes,
I would have pulled a Russell Hanson. Like, I'm never watching.
That's if Survivor wants to keep me, they gotta stop with all the mushroom agenda.
that
don't want to see about mushroom pizza.
All the people in the Facebook group would be really mad about.
I'm never watching the show again.
Mushrooms. I'd be that guy at the protest who has a very different sign, but also still protesting. Yeah, so no mushrooms for me, but yeah, pineapple, good. I feel like he did get a little bit of backlash on that, but I'm glad that he's owning it. It seems like.
Yes. Okay. Mike was going to eat so much pizza, Dave. How much pizza do you ask?
Come out of his ears.
I knew that I was going to eat until pizza was coming out of my ears.
Wait, is that a figure of speech?
It's funny you bring that up because when I was watching, I was like, has someone said this on Survivor before? Am I losing my mind? Has that happened? It has happened.
Not that. And so Tony had pizza come out of his nose back when we talked about it.
So maybe it's a Jersey thing that whatever you eat, it's just coming out of some part of your face.
That's all one like highway between your mouth and your nose. Like if I guess ear, nose, throat. So maybe.
Did it make you uncomfortable? It made me like thinking about it. Made me feel I didn't like the idea of pizza coming out of my ears.
Yeah, pizza coming out of your ears. That's a lot of pizza.
Yeah, it felt like
it's coming out of my eyes. Like I feel like that's a figure of speech more than coming out of my ears.
I think that's a really good. If someone asks, are you familiar with the I think I'm saying it right, misphonia? It's when when you're listening to something and you probably have. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but. Maybe you had a podcast where someone was eating or chewing or something, and then you had a lot of people that got really mad about it. This is like,
oh yeah, no, I'm the big no eating on the podcast person.
Okay, so great. So that's technically, if it really irritates you and makes you almost irrationally angry, the word for that is misphonia, and that's how I would just. If someone asked me like, well, what's that like? I would say it would feel like pizza coming out of your ears. It makes me uncomfortable to think about something affecting my ears that way.
Mikey, no likey.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I like Mike, but I don't like how he describes pizza.
Yes. I feel like that we'll have a lot of fun with this next time Mike Bloom is on the podcast.
Mikey, no likey.
Yeah. That's when you see an adult baby somewhere.
Mikey, no likey.
Okay. Then also Marianne went out of the challenge. And Marianne, so wholesome. Marianne. This is Marianne's reaction to going out of the challenge.
So, I mean, she was about to say, I don't know how much I can curse, but about to say shit, right? And then she just changed it to
shizzle sticks.
What's the word that what's not swizzle sticks? Is that what she was trying to, or shivels?
Yeah, so I don't think are shizzle sticks a thing.
No, I think she is combining another word, which I can't believe I'm blanking on right now. It's not swivel sticks. It's like fiddlesticks. I think she started to say fiddle, and then turned, but that was
which is like used for a different bad word.
Yes, true, but I feel like it's so. I feel like I said fiddlesticks as like a 6-year-old.
Yeah,
was cute or
now
something.
a swizzle stick is a thing, right? It's like a straw.
Yes, exactly. I think it has to do with drinks specifically, like maybe a mix. I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, and Snoop Dogg used to say faux shizzle, but a shizzle stick. That's not what the pieces in Jenga are called, right?
No, I think that they're just regular old Jenga. Legal. I'm trying to make up a word. I can't even do it. But Snoop Dogg should definitely or someone should recreate that song, maybe with your friend Josh Wigler on the. I don't know if that's ever coming back, but with the Shivel Sticks with a Snoop song. I'd be all for that.
Yeah. Okay. Although I am looking up on what is a shizzle stick? Okay. Let's see. So I guess the people have combined shizzles and fiddlesticks.
Shizzle. Okay. I guess that's what you're saying with Snoop, with shizzle, not so much. Okay. Yes. I would not be surprised if a future super fan on the show, perhaps listen to this podcast, you hear them say shizzle sticks at one point, just walking down the beach. That seems like a what's it? A JD type thing to do at this point.
For shizzle. Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay. Speaking of Marianne, we always like to check in with the survivors on social media. I just have one this week to share with you. Of course, have you followed the love story of Zach and Marianne all season, Dave?
Not only have I followed, I would love to officiate their wedding if they ever meet, or when they meet at their wedding. Yeah, I love it.
Yes,
I love
when they meet at their wedding.
Well, that was in Zach's. I think what you're getting to in his video, the best line of it.
Okay, all right. I haven't played the video yet. I've seen it here. Let me play for you the audio of Zach made a video for Marianne. Here we go.
Marianne, it's Zach from Ika. I just want to let you know how proud I am of you. You've accomplished all of your dreams, and you're accomplishing all of my dreams too. And I'm so happy for you. That's so amazing. I don't want you to worry about me. I'm having a great time here at pre-jury with Queen Jenny and my number one Swathi. I'm so happy. We're all so happy. We're all so happy for you. Oh my God, it's amazing. I just want you to keep doing amazing. You're going to kill it. Daniel just dislocated his shoulder again. Anyways, I love you, and I can't wait to meet you one day. And no, don't go swimming.
Okay. There you go.
That was like a cameo from Sony that someone, they don't know if they don't know the actual person, but they've been given a list of things to say.
Yeah.
I love
relatable.
It.
Yes.
Yes. No, I love Zach. I mean, man, I know he's not, maybe he is, but if you were trying to, he's making a pretty good case for a second chance vote. I would vote for Zach. Okay.
Oh, just
in a heartbeat.
But does he have a story without Marianne being on the season?
No, but that's what makes it so funny. It would be such fan service, or a blood versus water with Zach and Marianne.
How about this? Like, I am up for a Marianne second chance, just so we can have more great Zach content on Twitter.
Yeah, for sure. And there could even be, I don't remember what they called it, but do you remember when Kat in Blood versus Water, her like love one item was like a picture of her and Kim?
Yes.
Yeah, that could be for sure. Marianne could have just a picture of Zach with her, or maybe projected on a tree trunk, whatever's easiest.
Yep, and then we would have Zach content coming out of our ears.
That's right. Oh, I would hate that part, but I would support it.
Yes. Okay, Dave, the winner of this season is going to be who?
Drea.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I love Omar, and if he won, that'd be great. Like I said, I love really anyone winning at this point, but I think Drea, and not to get too much into the weeds, but from an edit perspective, Omar's kind of had this huge, just quick ascension, and I feel like, as I think someone has mentioned this recently in your podcast, he seems very much like a sort of fallen angel type.
Yeah,
the final 4 or 5.
Whereas see it.
Drea's has just been this steady incline the whole time. There's never really, she's just kind of getting better and better. And I think they're just building the case for Drea. That's from the edit standpoint.
Yeah.
From watching just her as a player, I think she's well connected. To your point about, it's funny that we haven't seen her playing emotionally. I do think she's the type that maybe like an Erica or someone else who is forming these bonds. It's just, or like even like a Sarah Lucina, where like they're really good at forming these bonds. It's just really hard to show that on TV. I feel like Drea kind of has that going for her right now.
Okay. Going back to High being voted out this week. High will be an all-star, yes or no?
I don't think so. I love High, but I don't think that. I think it'd be great to have him back, but I don't know that he's the top of their list at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's like on the cusp.
Yeah,
he's right there. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'm really glad that we got to talk through the do or die. I really felt like, okay, well, the do or die makes talking about next week's episode very difficult to do, but I think we did as good as you possibly could do to sort of like logic out what the ramifications of the do or die could be.
Yeah, the only other thing that I think perhaps we're missing is that Romeo may be the first out, and I wonder if that's how Romeo goes out.
That's Romeo. If the story is Romeo is paranoid, okay, then Romeo's paranoia could lead him to play in the challenge and then ultimately be the first person out of said challenge. So I do think that you could have a way where that Romeo's paranoia ultimately does him in the game where he would have otherwise been safe.
Yeah, and I could see that maybe they're playing it that way, but I don't want it to be that way. I really like Romeo. I'm definitely one of the. I don't know if there's a small number, but I'm definitely of that crowd that really likes Romeo. So I don't want him to go out that way.
Yeah, I am a Romeo fan. I feel like that we're not loud, but we're out here.
Proud. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, where could people keep up with everything that you're doing?
The easiest way, if you don't have TikTok, is my Twitter page. You can just look up Washington Post TikTok guy or Dave Jorgenson, and that's where I put everything, all stream of consciousness, but also all the TikToks are reposted there. I'm also Dave Takes Pictures on Instagram. Finally made that public after a long time.
Okay.
Yes. And verified.
And you're on Cameo.
I am on Cameo. Yes. And I'm glad you said that. I really do love Cameo. I know everyone says that, but I really love Cameo. So if anyone wants, and I'm the type of person who will go full out. If you have a weird request, I will definitely do that for you. So please send a Cameo request. I think
what's your weirdest request, Dave?
Someone asked me to do this. God, what was the song? I don't remember the song, but they wanted me to like put myself in a music video and wear a costume and dance in the music video. And I did the whole thing. Now, this is actually really interesting. I think for me to be on Cameo, for the Washington Post to agree to have, a video journalist be on Cameo, every request has to go through my boss.
Oh, interesting.
And so she has to approve it, which it's smart because, there are a number of things that could happen where someone maybe running for office asked me to do a cameo. We have to make sure that I'm not endorsing someone by accident or something like that.
Yes.
So yeah, it makes sense, but it is really funny to send her the request.
Dave, this happened to me this week because that I don't want to do Big Brother Canada spoilers coming in case turn off the podcast if you don't want Big Brother Canada spoilers. But the most recent winner of Big Brother Canada is a patron of Rob as a podcast, and then there were some people who were upset that their favorite didn't win. And then I had tweeted out about how that this was such a what an incredible night, and then this person started dragging me, saying how it was that it was inappropriate that I had been rooting for this person because I had been paid to do so because that they are a patron of mine.
Oh, that's a wild thought.
Yeah. Huh. I may have been paid off in double-digit figures, Dave.
That's okay. Well, I would disagree with that for sure. You're not a a news media institution. So
some might say.
So true. You are a significant podcast media empire, of course. But that's odd. I hadn't thought about it working out that way in that scenario, but I disagree with that person for sure.
So my journalistic integrity was called into question.
Finally been compromised. But what was I even saying? Yeah, I've had a lot of fun cameos and each of them are approved and I really enjoy those. So, and I'm happy to even do a cameo for the winner of Big Brother Canada because I don't think they're paying me money. So,
okay.
Yeah, I don't watch Big Brother at all, so maybe I'll regret that.
Okay. Dave, so fun to have you back here with us. I hope you enjoyed spending this Saturday morning together.
this is my ideal situation. I am more of a morning person, so this was
me too. Me too. I think I like doing podcasts at this time, especially like on the weekend. It's like I feel like I get to have like a fun brunch with people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I maybe one of these times we can put something else in the coffee. But no, I liked. It's a good way for me to feel like
a wild podcast, Dave.
That'd be a wild. Yeah, maybe not worth it.
Yeah,
but yeah, it feels like I'm getting my weekend off to a good start. I like these. I hope you have me back at one point, but also I just hope the listeners really enjoyed it because this is
Dave. Anytime you want to come back,
that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay,
great. And I'll see if my friend Fabio can come back too.
Okay. What a reunion that would be.
Yes.
Could you imagine? Maybe let's get T-Bird. Let me get T-Bird on it.
Well, if there's any scenario where this doesn't make any sense, but if T-Bird ever needs someone to help on Talking with T-Bird, let me know. I love T-Bird.
What would you do, Dave? What would you do on to help on Talking with T-Bird?
I think I would. I would like to be.
You should get T-Bird on TikTok. That's really what you should.
That's
be doing.
Actually really fun. I like that. I might try.
Because she makes those videos. She makes these elaborate videos for all the podcasts, and they might do better on TikTok than they do on Twitter.
I think they would. I think they would. I think the best thing about T-Bird, which is what TikTok generally rewards, is she's just so authentically herself and just like in the best way possible, and people would immediately pick up on that. Yeah, if I were on Talking with T-Bird, I would play referee and help steer her back.
bring her back.
But that's also the best part of the podcast in some ways.
She is active working on guests for season 3 of Talking with T-Bird, but she has her sights set high. She wants to talk to all of the like celebrity Survivor super fans.
Okay.
Like the Jimmy Fallons, the Tyler Perrys of the
Adam Scott.
Adam Scott. Yeah.
That would be great.
So she's also is working on Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Is he a Survivor fan?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay. She's just working on it.
Just some lofty goals.
The Survivor the musical.
Larry David also.
Okay, so how many of those people were actually Survivor fans? Or is that
I think the first 4 were all Survivor fans. Yeah.
Got it.
So we'll see. Larry David did work with Colby one time on an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
That's right. Yes, he brought his Survivor to dinner.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We still have a lot to do here this weekend. Okay. We're going to talk with Frail Mary on the Survivor Academy for the Patrons of Rob's podcast. Talk about everything we learned from Survivor this week and from High's game. Check that out. robisthewebsite.com/patron. I did a Facebook Friday this week talking with the patrons about this past week in New York and what a great time I had at the event seeing everybody. So you can check all that out in our patron podcast feed up at robswebsite.com/patron, not to mention all the other great Survivor podcasts we have coming up for you this week, including the B&B, Why Blank Lost, the Stock Watch with Taryn. I'm assuming Taryn's getting back to a Stock Watch. It's a bit busy week for Taryn with all the Big Brother, Survivor Global, and the Purple Pants podcast, Survivor News Edition, all in our Survivor podcast feed. That's all at robswebsite.com/subscribe. Thank you for listening, everybody. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.